So let's switch gears and we'll get into some Maple Leafs talk now. We're going to put a graphic over your face, so don't be alarmed, Carlo. Now, we've been doing this for every team so far. We've been doing this for every team so far, where we kind of review or recap what happened in the offseason. And I couldn't fit all of the additions onto this one, so I had to put...
You tried. You wanted to.
I tried. There's been quite a turnover here in Toronto with the Leafs this offseason, and it doesn't seem like it necessarily because the core of the team is still there. But if Jordan can go ahead, you can throw that graphic up, Jordan. There it is. So when you see last year's record, they were 36, 25, and 9. Didn't feel like it. Gosh, that was a frustrating season, and I'm sure you would empathize with me on that. But in terms of additions and subtractions, the Joe Thornton comes in, Wayne Simmons, Aaron Dell, Hutchinson comes back for that goaltender depth. They brought in Zach Bogosian, Jimmy Vesey, TJ Brody, Joey Anderson. Again, I almost couldn't fit. There's more than this. Barabanov comes in. Now, that was kind of a spring addition, but he's still technically a new addition. And then they got Hollander in that Kapanen trade. Subtractions. Tyson Berry's out of town. Kasperi Kapanen's out of town. Andreas Jansson's out of town. Cody Ceci, they let him go. Kyle Clifford and Jeremy Bracco, and then Freddie the GOAT. Austin Matthews led their team, and I was telling Max before the show started, Austin Matthews basically dragged them into a playoff spot some nights, and then they picked Rodion Amirov with their 15th pick. Now, let's go back to Carlo here. When I say all of those names, because there's a ton of them, who do you think might have the biggest impact? Either a guy who's gone or a guy who's coming in?
I mean, I'm not going to single out one guy that's going to have the biggest impact, because I think collectively as a whole, they have to bring an impact to this team, because outside of their core, not really much has changed. And really the criticism with this team lies within its core. This is a team that has not been able to live up to its expectations, has not won a playoff round in 16 seasons, and is going into a season with an enormous amount of pressure on them. Not only as players, but as management. I wouldn't say the coach, because it's his first full season, but this is Kyle Dubas's, second full season on the job. And considering the changes that he's made in 2 seasons of constructing this team, they're enormous. I mean, you talk about on a year-to-year basis, the influx of, somewhere around 10 new players. That's hard to find, instant success when you're trying to familiarize that many new players with a system that you want to play on a year-to-year basis. And listen, this is what they created. With the way they constructed their team, with the salaries that they've paid these guys, and not saying that it can't work. It's just never proven to work. And this is the challenge that they face, especially in a cap world where it's going to be flat for this season and maybe a couple more after this. So I think where you have to be encouraged about this team this year is that they swayed away from their philosophy a little bit, where they focused on, bringing in grit. They focused on bringing in character, the importance of having older guys around, which they saw in a guy like Jason Spezza last year. And, the way he played with a chip on his shoulder and a heart on his sleeve in the playoffs and leaving it out there. You can never have enough of those guys. And I've been preaching that for the longest time, even near the end of my career, is that as good as hockey is, with the transition into a youth movement, sometimes there's too much youth, and, you lose touch as what's really important in your locker room. It's great to have skill, and the Maple Leafs have a lot of it. But as you see year after year in the playoffs, the best teams with the best players don't always win. It's the best teams that win, and the teams that actually buy in to play a certain way, and teams that actually have balance throughout their lineup. Because I think the criticism for the Maple Leafs, at least the way I viewed them in the last couple of years, they've had way too many guys that want to play the same way. And, when you have that on your roster and you're playing in a 7-game series where the other team's third and fourth lines are bringing something different at you, what are you doing to counteract that? And, in a 7-game series, every inch of the ice gets tougher. It's great to have skill, and it's great to, score goals in the power play, but it's the game between the dots and in front of the net is where the games are won. And I don't think the Maple Leafs had enough of that. And maybe guys like Joe Thornton, Wayne Simmons help change that mentality and that approach to some of these young guys, and maybe defeat and the repeat feeling of failure is something that helps build more character with these guys. That's what the hope is in this city, and that's what the need is going to have to be, because they're only going to go as far as their star players take them. As much as they made moves around the edges to help make them better, I don't think the NHL did them any favors in putting them in an all-Canadian division, because I think, minus Ottawa, who probably doesn't have the same amount of pressure or at least skill compared to the 6 other teams that are there, who can you pick coming out of that Canadian division? All 6 teams were playoff teams last year, and it's going to be a battle to come out of that division this year. And I think on paper, the Maple Leafs are definitely the favorites, but we all know that you can be as good as you want to be on paper. The game is played on the ice, and this Maple Leafs last year was a team that felt too good about themselves at times when they were winning and had all the excuses in the world when they were losing. And that needs to change if they want to have any success in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of speak to the culture of it too, right, Carlo? When it comes to, I guess, the product on the ice now going behind the bench, Sheldon Keefe kind of had the unenviable task of following in the footsteps of one of the most highly regarded coaches of all time, and in Mike Babcock. In your eyes, how did their styles and philosophies differ from one another? And with the group currently constructed as it is right now, can he do something that no Leaf coach has done in the last 16 seasons and get them through a round of the playoffs?
Yeah, you know what? It's hard for me to predict right now. I really like Sheldon Keefe as a coach. I like his approach. I like his decision making on the fly and his ability to adjust within the games. I think that's really intuitive or something that's important in this day and age, especially when your roster is full of a lot of young players. He's a great communicator, which is what we've seen since his time coming here. But you talk about the differences. Mike Babcock was a guy that, knew how to play the game checking. He wanted to wear you down, and he wanted to make sure that you were focusing on the details of the game. And you have a coach that wants to play that way, but you really weren't offered, or at least given the players to play that way. It just seems like all those players that Mike Babcock really loved were being shipped out of town for more skill. And you saw the writing on the wall with the disconnect in philosophies. This is a Kyle Dubas built team right now, where he wants skill, speed, and size doesn't really matter. And I think Sheldon Keefe is best fit to coach that type of style. But, you like I said, you need to have more balance in playing that way, because, if you're going to roll out 4 lines of those guys all playing the same way, how are you really gaining an advantage when other teams' 3rd and 4th lines are checking you? And there's, checking's a big part of the game, especially when it comes playoff times. You can be as good as you want to be in the regular season, but if you don't win a playoff round, that's what you'll always be judged on. And for the Maple Leafs, that's something that's a label, or at least a conversation that they're going to need to change with their own play. I think the fact that now Sheldon Keefe has a whole offseason, I wouldn't say a regular training camp, but somewhat of a training camp where they're going to be able to practice a lot and infiltrate a lot of his systems and his way he wants to play. It's no secret. He wants to play a puck possession game. He doesn't want to give it up, which, creates sometimes some confusion on the ice, depending on, where guys think they should be, or where guys think where players think they want to be on the ice, because you have so many guys circling around the ice. And we've seen times when it works, and we've seen times when it looks ugly. And when it looks ugly, it's bad. But you need everyone buying in the same way to play the same way. And another thing too is, Sheldon Keefe's one of the youngest guys, in the NHL when it comes to being a coach. And that's why having a guy like Joe Thornton could play a huge role as to being like teaching guys how to play the right way and do the right things, not only on the ice, but the way they prepare and take care of themselves off the ice with their approach to the game. So, you hoping, even a guy like Zach Bogosian, who's coming in right now, fresh off of winning a Stanley Cup, there's things that he had to do to survive in the game, after missing so much time and departing ways from Buffalo. And I would imagine his experience and his time in a winning environment, which is something he never experienced his whole career in Tampa, really helped him appreciate. And, you hope that that's going to be something that he can help relate to this young group as well, too. So I think for the Maple Leafs, when I look at the way they play, it's all about less is more. When they try to do too much and they try to, focus on scoring the pretty goals, that's when they get themselves into trouble. Every goal is viewed the same way. It's got to go in the net. Doesn't matter how it goes in. Just everybody's got to be on the same page doing it.
Now, one of the most frustrating things for a lot of Leafs fans you mentioned it already, but over the last few years is that rotating door on the blue line. They haven't been able to find somebody to play with Morgan Rielly. I could go on. Jamie Anstey is watching from Halifax right now, and he brings up a good question, and I was going to go there anyway, so let's give the credit to Jamie. But we got Jake Muzzin, TJ Brody's coming into town, Zach Bogosian's coming into town. Obviously, Morgan's that staple. They also have Justin Hall. They have Sandin. They have Liljegren. They have Calle Rosen. They have Martin Marincin. They have Mikko Lehtinen. I could probably name 3 or 4 more guys. Where do you see, and Jordan, feel free if you want to put up that defense graphic of the top 6, projected top 6. Where do you see this defensive group kind of balancing out by the time they start playing games?
That's a good question. Obviously, they did a lot of work bringing in more depth. You talked about the guys that they have on their blue line right now. I really don't think this is going to be a season where you're going to see much of Sandin or Liljegren, just because the pressure to win right now is so high. To me, the big wild card on defense is, what type of player can Mikko Lehtinen be? This is a guy that they're really high on, really sought after, coming over from the KHL where he was the best defenseman in the league there. He even got off to a really good start in the season there when they started. And I'm interested to see where he fits on this blue line. The Maple Leafs believe he's a top 4 defenseman, maybe starting him with Morgan Rielly, or maybe just being a guy that they want to ease in. I mean, the tough part for him right now is he's not going to have any exhibition games to see the pace and the play of NHL hockey. But to me, he's the wild card. I think right now, Morgan Rielly's partner is still, something, that's up in the air. I think you have a choice either between TJ Brody and Zach Bogosian as one of those 2 guys that would probably fill that void. But I would view it more as, instead of finding a partner for Morgan Rielly, solidifying a top 4. Because if you can have trust in your top 4, knowing that you can trust them on the ice with any player that's out there, now you eliminate a matchup problem, especially when you're going on the road where you lose the line change opportunity. I always thought that teams that could have a legit top 4 and play in any situation against any player really give themselves a better chance to win the game, because now they're not having to worry about calling guys off the ice or worrying about who's on the ice against certain players. So I think that's where the Maple Leafs turned their focus, because they couldn't find that, unless you're going out and signing Alex Pietrangelo, which, surprising that they didn't make a bigger push to do. But, again, they wouldn't be able to do the other moves that they did if they went out and did that. So you understand why they did it and decided to go with Bogosian and Brody. And I always said that if you can't get Pietrangelo, and how much money you would have allocated towards that, well, then go out and get 2 or 3 guys that can fill that same vote and just give yourself more depth. I really like the step that Justin Hall took last year. I've been a big fan of him right from day one when Mike Babcock decided not to play with him. And I think what that also presents is a matchup where, depending on what you get out of Bogosian or Brody, you've seen what Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall can be as a pair last year when they played together, and they were a really good pair together. So that's another option for them. Travis Dermott, to me, is another guy that can be a wild card here. He's a guy that struggled to find his form last year, mostly because he missed the first little bit with injury, and he came in at a time when the team was struggling and maybe put too much pressure on himself. But I think as a whole, the Maple Leafs as a group of 6 are a lot better than they were last year. And that's really all you can ask for in this type of season, where it's going to be compacted. You're going to be playing games every other night. The rest is and healthy bodies are going to play a big role. And we saw when the Leafs started to suffer injuries last year, their depth was really thin. I mean, we have a rule on our show on First Up that we don't mention the name Martin Marincin, because he's the guy that just won't go away. And if Martin Marincin plays a game for the Maple Leafs this year, that means that they're really thin on the blue line and that they've suffered a lot of injuries because he's so far back on the depth chart. So And who's kidding who? A lot of people were criticizing the play of Freddie Andersen, but I've always said, don't blame Freddie. Give yourself a chance to put an actual group of defense that you can trust in front of him before you start criticizing Freddie Andersen's game. Because without Freddie Andersen, this team wouldn't even have been a playoff team last year or the year before. So a lot of questions to answer. I think, there's a lot of cautious optimism, at least on my part, with the Maple Leafs this year, because they have made changes. I believe they've made some good changes. But again, you have to find the right fit, and it remains to be seen if the guys that they bring in are the right fit to surround this core. I think they are, but again, it's up to them to go out and prove it and show it.
Just a really quick one. We talked about, a lot of those guys, the TJ Brodys, Mikko Lehtinen, and Travis Dermott is a guy who's kind of on the bubble almost right now on that roster, long term at least. But they're all left-handed shots, and there's a lot made. You were a left-handed shot. There's a lot made of that playing on your off wing as a defenseman. How much does that play into it at the NHL level? Because look, I was a left-handed defenseman. I played midget AA in Regina, Saskatchewan. I played offside. I played on the right side. But that's not the NHL. So when you get to that level, how much of a difference does that make, really?
It all depends on the player's comfort. I know for me, early in my career, I loved playing the right side, just because I was able to use my skills a lot better. Skating, quick transition, one-timer, making a quick play when I get it. But as I got older, I hated playing it because I was more of a guy that understood that less is more, and being in the right position at the right time, and the importance of making a good first pass. Because in a league where right now there's so much freewheeling, that's why defensemen are so important, is because you need guys that can put the puck on your best player's stick. And so I always preferred being on my left side for that. And there is a true value to having a lefty righty, because you really do allow yourself to be at your full strength playing the position. TJ Brodie is a guy that's played his right side, but he played it alongside Mark Giordano, and Mark Giordano was a guy that was winning Norris trophies later on in his career. And who's to say that, TJ Brodie wasn't a big part of that. But, I know from playing with a guy like Alex Pietrangelo in his rookie season, even in his second season in the league, that he made the game easy for me because I would just find a way to get him the puck, playing my strong side. So, they definitely have another challenge in front of them, because it's been the criticism that people have pointed out about this group is they don't have not even a top pairing right-handed shot defenseman, but not enough of them to give you the chance to play full righty lefty. And I think any defenseman will tell you it's easier to make a pass when you're facing up the ice instead of making a pass when you're only seeing 3/4 of the ice.
Absolutely. And you know what, Carlo, when you look at it with the roster that Kyle Dubas has constructed here, he's going into what, year 4, year 5, Clark, of his tenure as the Leafs GM?
It's Carlo mentioned it earlier, but it's only his second
full season, right?
Because it was cut short, obviously, and yeah.
Absolutely. But are we at the point, especially with obviously the temperament in Toronto and the fan base, is it kind of at the point with the amount of changes made? Is this the year where the stamp is put on Kyle Dubas's Toronto Maple Leafs tenure if the season goes poorly? Or if it goes well, what are we looking at out of the young GM here? Is it a long-term fit extension-wise? Or, again, is it boom or bust time for Kyle Dubas even this early on in his Leafs tenure?
I don't like speculating on people's futures, but I can tell you one thing. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Kyle Dubas and this Maple Leafs team to perform and have success. I think it's a must for everybody's safety that they win a playoff round this year. Because anything short of that, I would anticipate there being some major changes, or at least some serious discussions happening, at everybody's position. Because, the window's starting to close on Austin Matthews, his new contract. You've paid a lot of money to some of your core players that, and I don't want to speculate on what this season's going to be, but if they don't get out of it, it's another year and another failure and another, missed opportunity with this core group. So not only will there be questions that need to be answered from management, there's probably going to be a lot of speculation, and people thought it was going to be this year. Maybe breaking up the core. Because as much as you want to be patient, winning solves a lot of problems. And, hockey, just like every sport, is a results oriented business. And when you don't get the results that you want, with the people that you've put in trust to help you get those, changes are made every year. I think there's a good opportunity that may happen, but there's also a good opportunity that they have a really good year, and it was worth being patient, and that's what most people hope for, especially myself in Toronto.
So you mentioned kind of how the core is still together, and a lot of the changes that have been made, although there have been a lot, they're all kind of on the outside almost, or on the depth portion of it. One guy who's still there who has a lot of question marks, and I feel like he's the biggest storyline, honestly, going into the season, is the goaltender, Freddie Andersen. Now, he's in a contract year. They're in a position where they can't really afford to give him a raise, a big one anyways, unless they shuffle some things. And especially, like you said, with the flat cap, and we aren't sure if they're going to be getting a raise in the cap in the next couple of years. So how big is this season for Freddie Andersen, and what do the Leafs need to do to keep him around long term, or is there maybe another plan in play here?
Well, like I said, I mean, Freddie's been the backbone of this Maple Leafs success for the last couple of years, or at least as long as he's been the goaltender of this team. It's pretty clear that, especially under Mike Babcock, that they couldn't trust anybody else in the net. So he understands his value to this team, and I think everybody else does. And I think Freddie's value is going to be determined by his play. I think, would have been nice to see, or for him at least, to get some security in his future with maybe a contract extension. But as you can see with the flat cap, the Maple Leafs had a lot of changes to make, and they just couldn't enter that discussion right now with him. And maybe they do want to see him, if he's actually capable of getting this team, past the first round, because, as much as we want to say it's been, the team's lack of success, Freddie, for as good as he's been and people want to recognize him for being, has a bad reputation of not being a big game goaltender in big games for the Maple Leafs. You talk about his play in past elimination games, where you need your goalie to be at its best in those games, and clearly he hasn't been. So it's not to say that he's not a good goaltender. I think I'm a big believer in Freddie Andersen. I think he's a great goaltender in the league and for this team. But maybe this is another good thing for him to go into a contract year where there's more things that he has to focus on, why he needs to be his best. I mean, not only is he playing for the team in front of him, but he's playing for his future and to secure a contract. And hopefully it's for this team if it's something they believe in. I think his age is a little bit of a concern considering the amount of games that he has played, to go anything long term with him, because as we've seen the trend with goalies that, Bobrovsky is another good example coming off a Vezina season. All of a sudden he gets term and goes to a new place and struggles to find his game. And that contract looks like the worst contract in the league right now. But I think what the Maple Leafs have to focus on too is doing a better job of managing his workload. And I think, having a guy like Jack Campbell right now, who's a guy they can trust being in the net to win them games, because they're going to need that from him this year. They're going to need wins from their backup goalie, which is something they clearly failed to do over the last two seasons with that backup position. So that might take a little bit of pressure off Freddie too, knowing that he doesn't have to play every night and be fresh when he's out there. And come playoff time, that's maybe a good chance where he'll be at his best and, have the most energy for him to be at his best.
And they brought in Arundel and they brought Hutchison back as well for that four goaltender depth. And then they got those couple of young guys.
Those are good depth moves.
Yeah, definitely. And especially since it came out that they are required to have 3 goalies on the roster now. So that adds to that as well. We got 2 more for you, Carlo, and then we're going to let you go for the night. They're quick hitters. So we got the first one here. We've asked every single person on our NHL tour so far. What do you think of the Leafs version of the reverse retro jersey?
I hate it. I'm not going to lie to you. I hate it. I mean, I like the NHL's approach here of doing something different, doing something unique. But when you're going to do something, unique like that, make it eye-popping. I like the fact that they went old school with the white down the sleeve, but what's with the logo, man? Why is the logo the biggest thing on the jersey? Like, to me, it just looks too, it's an eyesore to me. And, they could have just gone the old early 90s, Dougie Gilmour, Wendell Clark, those type of jerseys, or go way old school, maybe do Toronto St. Pat's or something like that. But I'm not a fan of the Maple Leafs one at all. And considering that they're, one of the teams that's, that has a huge following, you think they probably would have done a better job. I mean, look at the one I've got in the background here. This one would have been better than the one they chose. So, that's my opinion on it. I know there was a lot of criticism around it as well. With the size of the logo. And you know what? Even if you went with that logo, at least make it more proper than the way that they sort of make it look. And I always question, how that stuff gets approved. Like, if I'm saying that, what are the people inside saying, right?
So yeah, you're not the only one.
It is what it is.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying it is what it is. Go ahead.
So to build on that, on the Rod Pedersen show a couple weeks back, we had Rick Vive, and Rick Vive played in the era that they're trying to mimic, and he said he hates it. So I think that's the last word. I think that's all that matters.
100%.
So the other worst part about it too.
It's like the printing machine was on like the extra zoom when they printed, and they're like, oh, well, we printed all these logos. What are we going to do with them now? I should throw them on the shirt because the Leafs will sell.
The worst part for me is it's not even a white down the sleeve. It's like an off-white grayish almost when they actually wear it in full light. And the other thing is the numbers on the back are about as big as those Sabres numbers from on the wall behind you there too. They're almost as big as they're almost as big as the logo on the front. Man. So final thing, we got to do this because we've been, again, everybody we've asked so far, we've had to finish the interview off with this. Canadian division is official. It's the first night we can actually say that on our show anyways. Mm-hmm. Where do you think the Leafs finish in the Canadian division this year?
Wow, I was asked to answer that on my show.
It's a tough question. It really
Vancouver. Is. I picked Vancouver to win the division just because they took a massive step as an organization last year. They've obviously let Markstrom go because they have a lot of belief in Demko, and they brought in a guy with even more experience in Braden Holtby. I think when you can build around pieces like Quinn Hughes and Elias Pedersen and Brock Besser and JT Miller, now they add Nate Schmidt. They replace Chris Tanev with him. I think that's an exciting team to watch this year, and a team that's probably going to start with a lot of confidence considering the success that they had last year. The Maple Leafs are definitely going to be a favorite for sure in that division. I mean, like I said, on paper, they should win the division, but this team always finds a way to make life more difficult for them than it needs to be. How do you count out Winnipeg with Connor Hellebuck being the Vezina Trophy winner there? Calgary, got Markstrom. I think Calgary might struggle out of the gate a little bit just because, Markstrom is coming into a new system and playing behind a new set of defensemen, and it might take some time to build some chemistry with those guys. And that's a group right there that is pretty fragile right now, playing with the same amount of pressures that the Maple Leafs are under this year, with a group that was, heavily criticized and heavily speculated in trade rumors throughout the offseason. You can't count out the Edmonton Oilers, even though I don't believe in their goaltending, but they got two of the best players in the game playing for them. And on most nights, those two guys will find ways to win more games than lose. I think Montreal is the dark horse here. I think Montreal is a team that really improved tremendously in the offseason. You saw the way they played in the return to play, upsetting the Pens, and the way they did it. I think it really stood out. How good their decor is. And then they add to that with guys like Joel Edmondson. And I really believe they have, one of the best top fours in the league. And in a shortened season with Carey Price, they bring in Jake Allen as well. That's a good 1-2 punch to have over there. And they add some scoring. They bring in some grit with Josh Anderson and some scoring with Tyler Toffoli. So I think that's a team that has a chance to make some real noise. Unfortunately for Ottawa, that's a team that's still rebuilding. Yes, they got Matt Murray, but, I think there's going to be a little bit more time for them to develop. Am I missing anybody right now in the Canadian division?
No, you've crushed it.
Everybody?
No, you crushed it.
Yeah. So the Maple Leafs should definitely be a top 4 team. But, we're going into one of the most unique seasons, aside from the return to play, where you're going to have so many factors that play in with injuries, with COVID, with condensed schedule, with an all Canadian division, which is what I'm excited to see because, this might be a good time to actually see some rivalries be developed organically, instead of, trying to force it on teams. Just the whole Calgary and Ottawa, the rivalry that could be created just for the brother relationship of the Kachucks. That's going to be fun to see. Calgary, Edmonton, the Battle of Alberta, and just Toronto, Edmonton, McDavid and Draisaitl against, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, the firepower there. And then let's not forget about the young stars in Vancouver. I think it's definitely going to be one of the toughest divisions in hockey and probably one of the most exciting divisions in hockey for sure this year.
Yeah, that's one thing. Me and Max were talking about it before the show. Since the Colaiacovo era in Toronto, I feel like the Toronto-Montreal rivalry hasn't really been there. It's still a thing. It's still there, but it's not the same as it was. And then you got even the Toronto-Ottawa is still not. It's not quite the same as it was back in the day. So to me, this could be huge for the NHL as a whole. Like this could turn into something where these, like you said, these rivalries get reborn a little bit, and long term, it's huge for the league. So that could be great. Yep. Go ahead.
I sorry, hate to cut you off, but there's some speculation that there's going to be a schedule released tomorrow, and what I'm hearing is that they're going to adopt like a baseball type of schedule where you go in and you play a team two in a row or 3 in a row, whatever it means, depending on travel. And I think to me, that's going to create mini playoff series, right? Where you're going to see, you're playing the same guy every night. And by the third night, you're going to want to kill the guy that's across from you. And, and especially, in a 56 game season where there's not much room for error, a lot of these games are going to mean a lot when you're playing them, and you can't afford either to get off to a slow start or to get into some sort of mid-season slump because you're not going to have the same amount of time in a normal season to try to rebound from that. So, which might, create more intensity within those series and within those games.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Pumped, looking forward to it. I'm glad it's happening.
Yep.
And we're all very happy that it's finally back, and hopefully we get a schedule maybe in the next couple of days at least.
Like it. We got the drop right here on the show. Thanks, Carlo.
Absolutely. Carlo, thanks for checking in with us tonight. Enjoy the World Juniors, and obviously enjoy the hockey when it's back. Merry
Christmas to you, Carlo. Thank you.
Let's kick 2020 in the ass, and let's look forward to 2021.
Get out of here. I love it. All right.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Carlo. We'll do this again down the road.
You got it, boys. Take care.
All right. Take care. And that, of course, was our first guest of the night, Carlo Colaiacovo, and that's brought to you by IKS Media. IKS Media and the amazing team over there is your premier destination for all the event planning, live events, live broadcasts, entertainment, video screens, and so much more. Visit iksmedia.ca today for more information and find out how they can make your event the hottest ticket in town.